Transformers 1 has just come out, and I want to start off by saying this movie is way better than it has any right to be. Going into this movie, I was expecting an okay, maybe even good kids movie, but I truly wasn't expecting to enjoy it nearly as much as I did. So what is Transformers 1? Well, it's an animated action comedy that both kids and adults will enjoy. It is set in the Transformers universe, but you definitely don't need to have seen any of the other Transformers movies or even the series to enjoy this movie. In fact, I think you might enjoy it a little more if you haven't. This movie is technically a prequel to most of the other Transformers media, as it is set before the birth of the Autobots or the Decepticons, the good guys and the bad guys. However, I don't feel like prequel is a good description, as it is much more a standalone / reimagining of the origins of many of the characters we know. It plays very similar to Super Mario movie, with the idea that there will be scenes that fans will pick up on, but you definitely don't need to have any knowledge of Transformers to enjoy this movie. So, let's get into this movie. This movie is set on Cybertron, the home world of the Transformers, a lush but very mechanically inspired planet where pretty much all life forms are machines. The Transformers / other robots all live inside the planet itself, and no one except the elite are allowed to go to the surface. The Transformers and their people have had 50 years of peace since their war with the Quintessence ended. During the war, all the Primes except Sentinel Prime were slain by the Quintessence. For those unaware, the Primes are kind of like the avatars from Last Airbender. They are a lineage of great warriors that are all connected. Additionally, due to the fallout of that war, the matrix of leadership was lost, which caused Cybertron to stop flowing energon, which is the Transformers' life source, or basically their fuel. Because of the lack of energon, many of the people of Cybertron have had to work in the energon mines to continuously refuel their supply. It is there that we are introduced to two of our main characters of the story that are currently working in the mines. First is Orion Pax, played by Chris Hemsworth. Orion is clearly the do-gooder and the dreamer of the group, always searching for a way to prove that he is more than meets the eye. He is joined by his best friend D16, played by Brian Tyree Henry. D16 is much more the no-nonsense, follow protocol person. Things are much more black and white to D16, but Orion seems to be able to bring out the dreamer in him. If you're a Transformers fan, you'll find yourself going, these two look awfully familiar. The friendship and the chemistry between the characters is absolutely great though, and they make sure to take the time to have small bonding moments between them. It is during this introduction that we will learn a key piece of this movie. They may be Transformers, but they can't transform. It's not like they don't know how, it's actually they are physically unable to transform, because in this universe, without a cog, you are unable to transform. And it seems that only the Elite Guards and Sentinel Prime have a cog, thus letting them transform. This is actually one of the movie's strengths. They build up the characters and story without having to rely on the Transformer action gimmick for a good long while. It gives it a refreshing feel and forces it not to rely on big battles or big explosions every 5 minutes to keep your attention. During the starting mining expedition, we will also introduce to another character, Alita 1, played by Scarlett Johansson. I want to give you more on this character, but outside of a few good lines, she is very undefined and her character doesn't get a lot of development. As they are mining, they ended up hitting an explosive geyser of energon that causes the mine to collapse, and unfortunately the three of them get blamed and thus demoted for this. This causes Orion to decide he has to prove himself, and wants to join a special race that is happening the next day. The race is comprised solely of Transformers, although anyone is allowed to enter. So Orion wants to prove that a miner that can't transform still can compete. He's not even trying to win, he just wants to beat a few of them. And honestly, this leads to a great race scene. Eventually, as the story goes on, we will be introduced to our final party member, B-127, played by Keegan-Michael Key. He is the Joker / Michelangelo of the group, and he is truly the highlight when it comes to the comedy in this movie. He had me laughing out loud multiple times, and I was still always rooting for him. The four of them band together in a mission to help find the matrix of leadership, which leads them on a surprisingly great journey with some twists and turns that even if you see them coming, still resonate with the viewer. So, since I can't get into too much else without giving spoilers, I'll just say that there are multiple points in this movie that surprised me. And I was hooked on every part of this movie, and I'm not a huge fan of Transformers. It plays much more like Wreck-It Ralph or the Lego movie as opposed to a Transformers movie, and I think that's a plus. This leads me into what makes this movie so good. By removing the ability to transform, it allows the story to focus more on the human aspects of the characters. It allows for little moments to show the conflict between the characters and the funny moments to allow the audience to bond with them. It even makes sure to have a split of some great jokes for both adult members and hardcore fans, including a GoBots reference. Additionally, the CGI is absolutely amazing. From the very mechanically inspired scenery, to the epic set pieces for the battles, to one heck of a race scene, this movie just nails it. The best part of the CGI was the reflections you can see on the Transformers themselves. I vividly remember one scene where Alita is talking, and when her head moves, you can actually see the reflection of the side of her head on her arm or on her shoulder. And the reflection is so highly detailed. It is the little details in the CGI that help it look so good. Honestly, the only major critique I have with this movie is they didn't cast the original voice of Optimus Prime, Peter Cullen, in even a cameo role. He has been the voice of Optimus Prime since the 80s and has appeared in almost every major Transformers movie and property for the past 4 decades. I know they made this decision to recast a lot of the voices to set this movie apart from the other properties in the franchise, but I would have loved a minor cameo or nod to Cullen, as he is synonymous with the franchise. But that's not a knock on the movie itself. All that being said, this is my favorite Transformers movie overall, and my second favorite Transformers property. My favorite will always be the lesser known of all the Transformers properties, Beast Wars. But that's just my personal taste. I will say it is definitely worth a watch for anyone that enjoys a fun, action-packed family movie. And thanks to its refreshing take on Transformers, and its commitment to focus on the character's journey and not just rely on huge explosions and big actions, this movie earns a 3.5 out of 4. Yeah, it's that dang good. And I highly suggest you check it out in theaters to truly appreciate the CGI on the big screen. This has been SOS Movie Reviews, putting the review back in the reviewer. Signing off. And remember, Maximals maximize!